Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the Lego Batman movie. On the surface, the Lego Batman movie sounds like the worst nightmare of corporately controlled Hollywood taking control of the movies, and seemingly sounds like something that could probably never be any good at all. But the Lego Batman movie, much like the Lego movie before it, defies all of that and ends up being a really enjoyable, fun blockbuster about cinema's most popular superhero vigilante. And it's so made to be a commercial. There's definitely things in here that you can imagine being in Toys R Us as the Lego Batman movie playset, and it plays into that, but it's also a lot of fun. It feels like it's making toys for kids to play with, but it also feels like you're watching a kid play with Legos, much like, spoiler alert for the Lego movie, but I guess like that scene in the Lego movie. It feels like that kind of weird energy. This film might not be as enjoyable or as entertaining or as subversive as the first Lego movie that's almost calling itself out, but it's really still a really fun movie. The Lego animated films, if they're able to keep up this kind of joke after joke nature, referencing everything from Batman's career, tons of pop culture references in ways that most animated movies fail and feel insecure, the Lego Batman movie feels like almost very timed and perfectly thought out, coming up with like mini criticisms about both the DCU and Batman movies in general, and pulls it off better than most of them can even imagine. The Lego Batman movie succeeds in building a really beautiful animated franchise that is actually both as entertaining as it is corporate, but still manages to stay incredibly enjoyable. After the Joker is prevented from exploring Gotham City and finds out that Batman doesn't care at all about the Joker, or that the Joker is his arch enemy and doesn't really consider himself to have an arch enemy, the Joker is really upset by this and needs to find a way to get revenge on Batman. And after the new commissioner, Barbara Gordon, is in town, decides to lock himself up in Arkham Asylum to be put in the Phantom Zone to bring out all the villains in the Phantom Zone, including like Voldemort and all sorts of various Warner Brothers own characters, to go against Batman, as Batman's having his own identity crisis, as he feels like he's good being by himself, but then accidentally adopts an orphan, Dick Grayson, and needs to find a way to defeat the Joker and stop all these villains, while also trying to figure out a way to work as a team with both his new sidekick Robin, Alfred, and Barbara Gordon. One of the interesting things about the Lego Batman movie is it's so referential on Batman as a character, and at first, while I was watching it, I didn't think about how most people might not get these jokes in it, and I'm sure there's some things, like I don't think Nightwing's is popular, but he sort of is, and some of the more like comic booky jokes I think maybe people wouldn't get, but a lot of them they probably would. Batman's one of the most iconic and probably the greatest comic book character ever created, and most of his movies are huge, ginormous hits that like literally everyone has seen probably at least once or twice, so it's kind of an interesting thing to do. It also shows how large and how much of an influence Batman has, because I don't think you could do the Lego Superman movie to the same effect, really. I don't think you could play with it the same way. I'm sure there's more characters people don't know in Superman, whereas most of the minor characters in Batman everybody knows, which I think the Lego Batman movie definitely uses to its advantage. I mean, the whole portrayal that Will Arnett is doing is really skewering Batman, and I think they do an excellent job of using the kind of pop culture knowledge and the general knowledge that most people have of Batman to their advantage, really. It's similar to, I guess, what most cinematic universes do with how we feel about these characters over time watching several films. This kind of does it with the shared experience of watching everything from the Tim Burton movies to the Joel Schumacher movies to the Chris Nolan Batman movies and even the recent Zack Snyder one. But at the same time, it does it in a very playful sense. You know, this really does feel like you're watching little kids play and having various different toys that they just happen to have team up for reasons that are just because they have those certain characters in their toy box. And certainly the Lego Batman movie is doing that with just Warner Brothers owned intellectual properties such as like King Kong and Voldemort, obviously various DC characters, which part of me feels very cynical about, but it's also like the Lego movie, so how cynical can you be that they're really kind of pushing their own kind of corporate agenda, that they're pushing their own intellectual property, that they're making you think about their own intellectual property And it's kind of both like cynical and playful about it. It's not like they don't realize what they're doing. It's in a very self-aware way. I often wonder when we have media like this, what's it like for the people who don't entirely understand or who are in the know with this self-awareness. I'm curious what this movie's like for a kid who hasn't seen like every Batman movie. And I think it also shows the willingness of DC and Warner Brothers to have a little more fun with their characters in terms of animation than certainly Marvel or any other really big studio has with their properties. Not to bring up everyone's new favorite show, Teen Titans Go, but that shows a willingness to play with the characters, not just let them be the characters the same serious way they're to be interpreted. And I think the Lego Batman movie showcases the good of that, whereas Teen Titans Go showcases the worst aspects of something like that, where Lego Batman shows the excitingness, the willingness, the openness to it. Remember when Aardman had those Batman shorts that were really cool that didn't air too often, unfortunately? Lego Batman shows the superior nature, really, of DC and their animation unit, which is interesting that this came out after, like, The Killing Joke, which showed how that could kind of not work out. And after, you know, the DCU movies, which that didn't work out as well. This shows a willingness to play and have fun with it, especially from a character who most of the modern cinematic interpretations of Batman have been more about Frank Miller and the edginess and the darkness and the noir and the loneliness as to stray away from what Adam West did. Lego Batman shows that maybe we've come around to, before we weren't really accepting of the Adam West thing because we're like, oh, that doesn't really get Batman, but the Adam West things, the idea of it was never to quote unquote get Batman the way he was before or the way he was after. It was to do a different goofy interpretation. And I think the Lego Batman movie's trying to do that again, but almost found a new 2017 way to do it. And I think probably the perfect time after Batman's gone so super serious so many times. I think the interesting thing about the Lego movies is, both the Lego movie and this Batman one, is they're able to use the kind of Warner Brothers house animation style that Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes really introduced, bringing more of a willingness, a silliness, a kinetic energy to it, doing that in the right way. You know, something like Storks, for example, which Warner Brothers Animation or Warner's Animation also didn't really work with that, whereas Lego Movie does that so perfectly well. It's kind of amazing. When you see someone do this kind of joke and this kind of humor and this kind of fun energy right, it feels like a masterful job, whereas when you see it done wrong, it feels insecure and boring and you kind of want to get out of there. I'm not saying it's as good as a Looney Tunes cartoon or something, and it's not as good as the Lego Movie, frankly, but it's able to capture that energy better than most cartoons do. Like, certainly I see so many more failed attempts at doing this kind of humor than ones that succeed, really. These new Lego movies, I don't know if it's like a cinematic universe or like what it is. It doesn't seem to have an official name, but whatever this franchise is, I'm more open to stuff like this that are willing to have fun with the ideas of this. The way Looney Tunes could sometimes play with genre and play with our expectations, you could do this with other characters and other DC characters and have fun with them. And I think that could really work for these Lego movies, and is how Lego Batman movies succeeded, almost in the same way the Lego movie used various characters from their pop culture landscape that Legos have done before. It is kind of quite odd to have kind of a Lego franchise that knowingly they're trying to sell you Legos. You know that they made this to sell more Batman Lego sets and everything like that, but it can still be enjoyable. And I think it shows, just because something's corporate doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's good, I guess, either. I think Lego Batman's able to ride that line, at least for now. It's a dangerous territory to play in, and although this was written by so many people, and you can tell it's very labored over, but kind of in the perfect kind of a way for a movie like this. And I really like the direction by Chris Mckay, who previously worked on things like Robot Chicken and Moral Oral, and you can really tell that kind of a sensibility is on display here. He also helped do animation direction on the Lego movie as well, so I really liked Will Arnett's performance as Batman. I don't know if it works as well as in the Lego movie, but I still think it worked fairly well, and I think he does like a spot-on interpretation of the Batman character, as well as Michael Cera's Robin is pretty perfect. Rosario Dawson, I thought, did a good comedic performance. I haven't really seen her in many bigger things in a while. It was interesting that Ralph Fiennes was in this, and Voldemort was, but not voiced by Ralph Fiennes, which might have just been he didn't want to do that, but it's kind of weird that he's in this and someone else is doing Voldemort. more. Like, I don't know if there are other people in this doing voices that had their own iconic characters not voiced by them, or he just didn't want to do it, or they didn't want to pay him, or something like that. I can't imagine they didn't want him to do it. I don't love Zach Galifianakis as the Joker necessarily. I think he's fine for this movie. Obviously, that's a tall order, especially because probably more famous person doing Joker is Mark Hamill, and I don't think he really holds a candle to that. I know he's doing more of a silly thing, and they probably wanted more of a comedic actor, but it's not like Mark Hamill's ever done, funny cartoons, so why ask him? But it was also interesting, the very homoerotic relationship between Batman and the Joker that they really went for in this. There are certain scenes where I was like, wow, they're like really pushing this angle, and they're not even like being a little subtle about it. I almost thought Joker and Batman were going to kiss or something, and even the terminology they use in it based on their relationship is very much like a romantic relationship, which I think is interesting. Has anyone shipped Joker and Batman before? I'm sure they have. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a funny way to take that relationship. That's another part of this film, when it has these relationships between the characters, very much plays off of our preconceived notions of these characters, which I think is funny because it both plays in a way that it's just humorous, seeing them do these certain things and play off the kind of iconography they're already playing with, like the romantic element of it, but it's also funny because you're basing that on, the characters of Batman and Joker and the relationship between one another. And I liked all the movie references in it, and I thought they were very funny, even like making fun of things from the DCU, which obviously they probably put in later. It seems like there are a lot of voice changes and things like that. There were like so many people in this. There were people I didn't notice who I really liked in this. Everyone from like Eddie Izzard as Lord Voldemort, you had Seth Green as King Kong, Jermaine Clement as Sauron, apparently Chris Hardwick was in it at some point, Doug Benson as Bane, who's really good, Conan O'Brien as the Riddler, Billy D. Williams finally getting to play Two-Face, Mariah Carey was the Mayor, Jenny Slate as Harley Quinn, Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum came back as Superman and Green Lantern, Adam Devine as the Flash, Ellie Kemper was in this. They actually got the voice of Siri and was credited as Siri, but her name's Susan Bennett to do the voice of Batman's computer, which I thought was kind of cool, and is credited as Siri as well. The Lego Batman movie isn't as good as the Lego movie and doesn't say as much or do as much and doesn't push the envelope as much as the Lego movie did, and somehow made a movie about Legos a really enjoyable animated movies of the decade. The Lego Batman movie is just a fun, ridiculous, funny, wild animated movie satirizing probably one of the biggest characters in cinema today, and it works for that. I think it works really well in that. It's more of probably a more enjoyable and favorite animated film than it is hitting these high bars that I didn't think a movie like this could, because we're already set up for it, but it doesn't do anything with that. It's saying things about the character of Batman and doing an interesting thing with it, and that's fine, and I had a good time with it. And maybe I'm unfairly comparing it to the Lego movie, but I think with the Lego Batman movie, the Lego franchise or whatever it is has a very bright future ahead of it, even if it is really trying to sell us various Lego playsets that are probably pitched before the script was even done and inserted within it. It's still an enjoyable, fun ride while it's trying to do that, and maybe some commercials can be a little fun and have some good jokes within them and give you a really nice, good time. And as long as that's going on, I'm ready to have a good time with something like the Lego Batman movie. So if you have seen the Lego Batman movie and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.